Hey, so welcome here. Welcome here. My name is William Shane DeLoach from FIU's EEL 4789 Ethical Hacking class. Just coming to you with a quick guide of some sort, for DDoS attack and security. Alright, so if you don't know what a DDoS attack is, it stands for denial of service attack. If you get one of those messages while visiting a website that says server unavailable, gives you some kind of error, a lot of times it's because someone's flooded their traffic and it no longer works. So, DDoS attack, they flood you, they give the server as many requests as possible so that traffic is completely interrupted. But unlike a virus or worm, the DDoS attack can interrupt your service for a significant period of time, not just for a little bit of time. In other words, it's an attempt to make a machine or network resource unavailable for its intended users. Now, a DDoS attack is a distributed denial of service attack, which is when you use multiple systems in an attempt to interfere with the normal functioning of a target system. So, DDoS attacks are usually large-scale attacks. They use a botnet, which is basically a ton of computers to conduct their attack. This isn't just one attack coming from one machine. One thing that's bad about this is that there's more and more attacks happening all the time, and it can affect everyone, but it's really devastating for major financial companies. And if you're into online gaming, there's always someone trolling, wants to send an attack just to make everyone's day really bad. So, for large-scale attacks, there's millions of computers that could potentially be involved in one attack. You see this big server, any of those computers could be participating in an attack without your knowledge. So, what exactly is a botnet? Botnet is when a hacker, he'll send out Trojan viruses, whether it be through an email and your any kind of file they get you to execute on your computer, and then it installs a backdoor on your computer. They can control your computer. So while you're using your computer could also be part of a botnet, helping a DDoS attack without you even knowing it. So it creates this huge botnet where the hacker can now use everyone's computer that he's infiltrated to commence his attack. So yeah, sometimes people just refer to them as zombie computers, and in this picture it shows the hacker. He controls the zombie computers, and the zombie computers carry out the attack instead of his computer. Some experts are estimating that over 1/4 of computers that are connected to the internet are part of some DDoS botnet, which is pretty scary to think about. Also, they're seeing about 7,000 DDoS attacks observed every single day, and this number is only getting bigger. Another interesting point is that this is happening so often in the cyber underworld, or black market, if you want to think about it that way. It's possible to rent out 80 to 100,000 hosts, and they will launch the attack for you. It's been averaging about $200 for each 24-hour outage of a web server. So it's pretty scary that this is for sale. It's almost like hiring a hitman or something. So the way this affects major companies is because it slows down, floods the traffic. It makes it so transactions are vulnerable. Transactions either won't be processed at all, and so all of that potential revenue is lost, or they can track those transactions, and that's always a bad thing. This mainly affects banks because so many transactions are happening all the time. They can lose millions of dollars from, if an attack they have an outage for a very long time. E-commerce institutions like Esurance and things like that, they can also lose a lot. Or sites like eBay, any site pretty much that sells anything. Information sites aren't hurt as bad because you're just displaying information, people visit, The only kind of financial aspect is maybe people don't get to see your ads, so maybe you get less advertisement. But that's really not as big of a deal. It's mainly financially, it affects financial institutions much more than just average websites. Also, furthermore, one day in Norway, they were actually hit with one of their biggest DDoS attacks of all time. Because one thing that was so scary is, usually there's just one attacker targeting something, and something happens. But now the big what if the entire financial sector was attacked, which is what happened here in Norway. 3 major banks, 2 insurance companies, airline companies, and telecommunications were involved all in the same DDoS attack, which made it pretty impossible to get some everyday stuff to work there. And, people couldn't withdraw their money, buy things. It was a complete disaster. Now, also in China, similar thing happened where China's internet went down in August 2013, and it's just ironic because China is known for having one of the best filtering systems in the world. The Chinese government likes to control the way their internet works. Like, they have one of the best cyber terrorism squads in the entire world, yet even they are susceptible to this kind of attack. Now, also, it affects some online games. Riot Game and Blizzard is very notorious for this happening to them. Xbox Live and Sony PlayStation Network also just always targets. People target the biggest targets. There's always someone maybe trolling, just want to see if they can do it, just stick it to the man, that kind of stuff, and it pushes you offline. So this is an example of what it looks like when you're trying to play League of Legends and you're attempting to reconnect because you lost connection to the server from so many people sending DDoS attacks. So many requests, your game is kicked offline. And looks like this guy loses because he's offline for most of the game. Pretty terrible. I mean, no one's losing money over it, but it is a complete waste of time and pain in the butt. So, here's also another picture of DDoS architecture. Here's the attacker. He's got all his zombies, and they're all attacking the victim. Here's also an example of somebody's download speed during a DDoS attack. You can see, 40 bytes per second is pretty low. That's pretty bad. I would be crying if my internet was this slow. And it keeps going down, 16 bytes per second. And I guess it even keeps going down further, down to 9. 9 bytes per second is about as pathetic it gets. Especially in the year 2014, that's just really bad. So, different types of attack vectors for DDoS attacks. There's volume-based attacks, protocol attacks, application layer attacks, and here's just a graph of the percentages of the different types of attacks that were made in 2012. Now, for volume-based attacks, one type is UDP attacks. UDP flooding, UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol. It's caused by sending a large number of UDP packets to random ports to a remote host. So the host is checking for applications listening on any of those ports that are open, and if they see no one's listening, then they reply with the ICMP destination unreachable packet. So the more of these packets, the more it's going to slow your computer down. And one program that's very useful that makes it easy to do this is called UDP Unicorn, and so that's what a UDP flooding is all about. There's also ICMP flooding. That's Internet Control Message Protocol for ICMP. What happens is attackers will send ICMP request packets to a host server, but they don't wait for the response. They just keep sending the request. This overwhelms the server, and then the server just starts blocking all requests, including valid requests from people who are actually trying to use the server correctly. Also, for protocol attacks, there are SYN floods, which is basically involves the 3-way handshake of TCP. That's where the attacker will send the SYN, or synchronized packet, to the host. The host is supposed to send the SYN-ACK message, the synchronized acknowledge message, back to the attacker, and then normally a computer then responds again with another acknowledgement to complete the three-way handshake and the connection. But in this case, the hacker refuses to send the acknowledged packet back, so then the server is waiting and waiting, and it never receives it. It makes the server run slower because it's not receiving these acknowledged packets because they're never going to come. Also, one famous DDoS method is known as the ping of death. So, Internet Protocol only allows you to send packets as large as 65,536 bytes. So, a ping of death is when an attacker sends any packet that's larger than that amount. This will crash or reboot the system, so it's very devastating. Sometimes they'll try to, some computers will completely block it if it's bigger than this amount of bytes, so a hacker sometimes fragments it into smaller packets, but then once they get sent to the computer, they all end up being more than that amount and still crack the system. So it's very, very it's not good. So also, there are Smurf DDoS attacks, named after the Smurf program that's used to carry out the attack. This is a method by which an attacker can send moderate amount of traffic, and it can cause an explosion of traffic to the target. This type of attack is also known as a DNS amplification attack. Smurf DDoS attacks involve you send an ICMP echo request packet to the target IP address, and then you send it through them, so you're spoofing their IP address as if you're this person. And then through that IP address, you're going to send ICMP datagrams to remote LAN broadcast addresses, just remotely. And then the datagrams broadcast to all of the hosts that are on any of those routers. So then each host is going to send an ICMP echo reply back to the target IP address. And so that IP address then receives all of these echo replies, and depending on how many machines are on the router can decide how large the attack is. So that's why it's called an amplification attack. So also, I mean, it's good to know that a lot of DDoS attacks happen against Apache, because Apache is the most widely used web service, so that's what makes it the most widely attacked. One program that can attack Apache is called Slowlaris. It is some software written by hacker security pro RSnake. It allows a single machine, so you don't need any kind of botnet. It allows a single machine to take down target's web servers by keeping open as many connections to the target as possible. Now this happens by the attacker sending only partial requests to the web server, so it can't receive or answer any valid requests. So what happens is in these partial requests, it'll just leave the connection open but won't carry it out. And then it'll just, once in a while, they'll keep sending HTTP header files. And so since these connections stay open, it takes up more space, and then the web server starts denying valid client requests from people actually trying to use the web server. So if you want to try to stop or prevent attacks, one of the basic things is, obviously, you should check your web server daily for sluggishness. You know, if your website can handle up to 10,000 simultaneous visitors, a hacker can use up to 100,000 simultaneous visitors to bring you down. Same time, similarly, if you can handle 100,000 simultaneous visitors on your site, the hacker can use up to 1 million visitors in his botnet to try to bring you down. So it's always good to check for sluggishness. Now, there's also a helpful thing which is called checking your web stats. There's a bunch of different softwares that make this easy, such as Smarter Stats or Analog. On the left, there's some normal traffic, you know, it just shows visits and page views. But on the right, that's what it shows the traffic that's like during a DDoS attack. On that Monday and Tuesday, the page visit numbers were insane compared to the visits. So, I mean, it just shows that they were trying to attempt an attack then. Here's also graphs from the same scenario. First picture, it's just normal traffic, people visiting. And then during the DDoS traffic, that one IP address did over 1 million page views and caused up to 34 gigs worth of bandwidth to be used. And that's slowing it down for everyone else that's trying to use the website, and they're just being trolls. Also, this is another way that you can figure out if you're under attack. If you check netstat using command line or a command prompt, on the right you can see normal. It shows the local address and the ports. It says who's trying to connect to you, and then it says, if the ports are just listening, if a connection's been established there, or if they're just waiting. So on the left, this is thousands of attempts of just time waiting to get to the port. They're not even establishing full connections, and you can tell that it's because it's from the same IP address thousands of times. Sometimes you'll get sometimes you'll have connections to a few ports from the same IP address while they're visiting, but that's not that untypical. But like thousands, clearly you're under attack. Now, furthermore, to prevent attacks, one method is you block the attacks with packet filters on your router. You want to keep your firewall and antivirus protection up to date. Close unnecessary UDP ports because they could be trying to listen in on your ports. You could be vulnerable, so it's always good to check. You want to check your DNS server settings. If possible, if you've identified which IP addresses are attacking you, then you can block those specifically. Also, reducing your SYN packet receive timer is a good idea because normally these attacks are just, they're sending some kind of SYN packet at you and they're refusing to also acknowledge and complete the handshake. So if you reduce the time that receives this, then it'll just time them out and they can't carry on the attack. So that can always help. Worst case scenario is you actually have to pay for more bandwidth. So that's always a good way. It's a good buffer because if you're under attack, if you have more bandwidth, it still lets the website run smoothly for everyone else trying to access it, even though there's an attack going on. But usually you don't want to have to do that because that involves caving in and just accepting that you're going to be attacked. So furthermore, on the DNS server changing, you want to configure your name servers, reduce the attacker's ability to corrupt a zone file with amplification record. Also, you can disable open recursion on your name servers and only accept recursive DNS servers from trusted sources. This reduces the amount of attack vectors they have against you. You can also use one of these DOS specialists, which is an organization that specializes in this. They have large-scale infrastructure. They're designed to be able to throttle and handle this bandwidth and make it so that your website runs smoothly. So that's like Arbor Networks, Black Lotus, DOSRS, Prolexic, VeriSign, and Incapsula uses cloud-based protection, which is really helpful. So here is a final example of how Prolexic uses their software to block a DDoS attack. So I hope this is informative, and that's about it. Thanks. Enjoyed the video, you can comment below. Once again, this is an educational video for my ethical hacking class from FIU. I just want to say thanks to Dr. Pons, great class. I learned a lot.